Pues bienvenidos a un nuevo episodio de Reinventándonos podcast, un podcast donde invitamos a personas que están enfrentándose a un cambio organizacional o bien nos están dando herramientas para reinventarnos hoy para el futuro. Pues hoy tenemos desde Ámsterdam a Myriam Hadnes. Ella es alemana pero vive en Holanda, Países Bajos, y bueno, es facilitadora, sabe un montón también de design thinking, de todo un poco, ¿no? Y entonces, bueno, va a estar hablando un poco cómo ha ido cambiando en la pandemia, durante la pandemia, toda esa facilitación, cuál se les ha permitido hacer y cómo tú puedes llevar la facilitación a tu lugar de trabajo. Así que no se lo pierdan, escúchenlo y bueno, pues welcome to the show, Myriam. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
So
Glad to be here.
Thank you. So I think we'll have pretty much fun and understand all the world that you open to many people and the possibilities that you make with your work. And we start with the checking round. So, what lessons have give you the pandemic in a personal level? All this COVID.
Oh gosh, where to start?
Yeah.
I think on the most personal level, recognizing that I was more of an introvert than I ever thought I was.
Okay.
That I actually enjoyed the quiet time, and I do enjoy the online conversations actually a lot, or the online work with groups. And then also the pandemic has forced me, as everyone else, I think, in the world, to overcome our insecurities of not asking. So through the pandemic, I think we're all pushed that we needed to reach out to other people and to ask for help. And because of the pandemic, it seemed as if we had permission to do so, because nobody knew what's going on. So it was a good way to reach out, and then also to recognize that all these boundaries that we operate in are almost artificial. So you're on the other side of the world, and still we're having this conversation together. And I think these connections across the globe became possible because of the pandemic, because we realized that, hey, actually, there's no reason not to connect.
Yeah. Wow, awesome. Yeah, I understand you a lot because I'm an introvert too. So yeah, I became more conscious about how I should rest and recharge my batteries and, take care of that precious time and to balance it. I think for me was an advantage to be introvert because finally I can stay at home many times and, like disconnect a little bit. And then, okay, I schedule my own time for thinking, and don't have to give reasons that, hey, I'm here, but I'm working on my own for now. And now nobody knows that I'm working on my own because I schedule for me. I blocked that my schedule. So yeah, it was I think I'm enjoying it. If I can enjoy it with all this context that we're living, and yeah, I really value also the conversations. The podcast was born in the pandemics, and it was something that probably before the pandemic it will be hard for me to introduce to this because I don't know, probably I have to do interviews one-on-one. That is cool, go with somebody, but sometimes all the time that you put it, all the preparation. So I'm pretty glad, and I think we have to building a better build back better, like making, not going back, but at least do it better than that it was before.
Yeah, and I love the example you're giving with the podcast, that it was born thanks to the pandemic at the end.
Yeah.
And it reminds me that restrictions help us so much to innovate and to go beyond our imaginary limits that or the boundaries that we put around ourselves just to feel safe. And for me, it was the Never Done Before conference, for instance. This crazy idea was also born out of the pandemic, because I thought, okay, there's nothing else to do anyway because all the clients canceled. So what can I do to create value and have fun and learn along the way?
Yeah, that is the, I mean, making those questions make us ourselves reinvent, you know, and that is, I think, something like another advantage to be an introvert, that we naturally reflecting people all the way, you know? And I think also that because we lose energy in every interaction, at least we want that every interaction make it worth, you know, like it's not like, okay, I have like a little bit of chances, so in that little bit of chances I want to bring my best, so what can I do to make it better, you know? And sometimes extrovert doesn't value, because for them it's like, okay, it's like something of their own nature. But for us, it's like, okay, I'm thinking, how can I bring the best of me in this particular interaction, in this particular conference or workshop, you know? We are pretty more conscious.
It's interesting because, yes, I realized that I'm more of an introvert. So groups cost me, as much as I enjoy groups and I love facilitating groups, when I'm participating, I'm a total introvert. When I'm hosting a group, I'm the perfect extrovert. But I need the me time to recharge. So although I tend to speak to think instead of many introverts who think to speak, but it changes depending on my role.
Wow.
And I do need time to recharge after being with groups.
Yeah, me too. That time is so valuable to research. Well, yeah, I think you already said something, but well, you are in one of the things you are is a facilitator, and probably not every people knows what is a facilitator, what is, you know, their limits, and when there is their chances, what is and what is not a facilitator.
This is a very good question. And what I have explored through my podcast is that many who do facilitate would not necessarily call themselves a facilitator. So for me, the essence of facilitation is to facilitate means, and I guess your Spanish speaking audience will understand right away, to make something easy. So to help a group to communicate, to ideate, innovate, and to clarify in an easier way through a structured process. So while a trainer comes in with a clear learning goal for a group, a facilitator comes in without a fixed outcome. So they might know what the goal of the session is, but the essence of the solution is unknown to the facilitator and to the group until the process is finished. So for me, a facilitator is someone who is in charge of designing and preparing this process to make sure that those who are in the room are the right people to be in the room to actually work on the challenge. The facilitator is in charge to hold the space where people feel encouraged to bring forth their best selves and their best ideas, to step out of their comfort zone while being in a safe space. And a facilitator is in charge of flattening the room so that every voice can be heard and every idea counts. And as opposed to a coach, where it's really about the maybe even individual introspection. So a coach would ask many coaching questions. So a lot of why question to really understand the personal journey. The facilitator might use similar tools of questioning and asking open questions to invite for broader thinking. But then the reason why we do that is more to align the group and to maximize the value of a group, that it grows larger than its parts.
Wow. Yeah, I really love it. And how do you say, make something easy, how to, you are like giving this or making this space for the audience, for the people. And I think you mentioned right now, like distinguish it between the facilitator and the coach, and there's still outside, and it's okay that be, because I think if it happens too, it's like how you can like complement or be aside like the classical corporate learning. How can you, and you say, okay, are both words that can be together, or I don't know, probably the corporate learning gets into a zone, and then the facilitators gets and carry on what's next, or how can you like complement, you know, because probably some people in the audience will be okay, but we have like this corporate learning that's we are like checking, okay, but I don't know how you can say to them.
Yeah, thank you for asking the question. And I think it's tricky. I think it's complementary. So I, as a facilitator, I would not replace corporate learning, because I think you can facilitate learning. So hopefully corporate learning programs will become more facilitated in a way that instead of only giving one way information, inviting the group to reflect and to own it. And I think everything that is related to experiential learning, I would put rather into the category of facilitation.
Okay.
But then I think facilitation in its essence, if you hire a facilitator, they usually come in without subject matter expertise, so that they can be open and present to whatever the room creates or comes up with, and guide them in a direction, and keep neutrality in the sense that we are not married to the outcome. So we don't come in with an agenda. We need to achieve this goal, and at the end we need this decision. Then it's not facilitation. Who was it? A recent podcast guest of mine called it facilitation. So a facilitated manipulation. It's not facilitation, it's facilitation. Yeah. So corporate learning, I think, if it's not facilitated, the learning process, it can become quite dull. And I think especially today with information overload and multitasking and too much on our plates anyway, it's very difficult for people to actually focus on learning, especially if it's online and self-paced. And it needs to be facilitated. I think.
That's cool. I think it's part. Yeah, it's a good compliment, but probably now we are more also conscious about this, to make it the learning happen and to help us solve problems that the organizations have. And I think that's like the best learning is when you're making obviously your own, but at the same time you use it to solve problems that are actually happen, or to create something that helps the organization advance. I think facilitators have a
And I think, so when I think of how quickly the world is developing and changing, and we still hold on the idea that there's something like an applied education. We send students to university to learn and study applied sciences, but as soon as they graduated, the application doesn't exist anymore because technology has advanced. So I think with the traditional learning or education models, we don't learn to think. And I think if our educators would put on the lens of a facilitator, it's how can we facilitate learning and how can we enable the group to create this curiosity so that they can continue learning after the teacher or trainer or facilitator has left the room. And I think this is the essence for me when it comes to the intersection between learning and facilitation or training or teaching, that we do need a different teaching or learning model.
Yeah.
That is more applied to the world we're living in.
That's amazing. I think it's a good part to advance to the next question is like, for example, if you have an owner or manager of organization that says, okay, how can you explain the process of facilitation? How can help me in develop with your facilitations? And even if I'm a beginner or like start exploring this topic, but I don't know how to make it happen in my organization, how can you explain to this manager or to the CEO how you will help this, or how it's a process will be?
So I think that we can practice facilitation everywhere. We can start with facilitating a conversation around the dinner table. But to come back to your question, maybe it's more applied. So for instance, if I want to approach a meeting or workshop from the role of a facilitator, then question number one is, I want to invite someone who has been working and telling the same story for the last 20 years in order to get some sand in the wheels or to build on this experience, but then this person needs to know. This is why they're invited. And then the next one is the process. So how do you design the conversation so that you know that you can bring the group from mostly confusion to clarity to action? So I would always start, no matter how short or long a meeting or workshop is, as you also did, with a check-in. So ask a question that can be very short. It can be a one word answer check-in, where you just invite the group to use their vocal cords. Because if someone has already spoken once, the likelihood of them speaking up again is higher. And also if you go around and everyone gets the chance to speak and to check in, then they also feel valued and they feel that they have a place in the space, a role, which links back to the second one, to the people. If the group is too large to really go around the circle and let everyone say something, then I would break them out into groups of two. Either online, it's very easy. Otherwise, turn to your neighbor and share why you're here today, or what are your expectations from the workshop, or what made you smile this week. Something easy just to engage them. And then lead through the process, depending on the goal and the purpose of the workshop. This could really look differently, but I think to be clear on the time boxing, acknowledging that if we give too much time for conversations, then they will take even longer. We never have enough time. There's something called the Parkinson's law. I don't know whether you heard about it. Parkinson's law says that every task will take as much time as you allocate to the task. And this basically explains why administration is so slow, or public service, because they just have all the time. But if you only have 1 hour to innovate, then you get stuff done in an hour.
Yeah. Right? You see it very frequently, like all the ideal exercise that you have 1 minute, 2 minutes to do a brainstorming, now to categorize, now to do this. So you are like focus, and we have to do it.
Exactly, and I think there's a very important difference between working under time pressure as opposed to working under stress. So working under time pressure makes us more creative. Working under stress makes us close down because it's our animal brain that gets triggered. And then we're in survival mode. If stress comes up, it means I need to survive. So I don't have literally energy and capacity to think about creative solutions. But when I'm in a safe space, that's why the concept of the safe space in facilitation is so important. If I feel safe to come up with crazy ideas, maybe with bad ideas, and it's okay, then the likelihood of me coming up with more ideas is higher. And as Seth Godin always says, good ideas come from bad ideas, as long as we have many.
Yeah, you see that all the creators, Beethoven, Mozart, all the works that they've done, some of them was amazing, and some of them was not that good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And still the bad ideas that maybe someone had will lead to a better idea eventually, because it might trigger an idea in someone else. And I think, we can learn most from bad ideas and starting to criticize or thinking about failures. I love pre-mortems. How can we fail for sure? This opens up all our creativity muscles, because our brain is better equipped to think, to prevent failure and think in terms of risks. And then we get very creative. Whereas if we think of how can we succeed, we just think, what have I done in the past that succeeded? Okay, let's replicate that. Doesn't work.
Yeah, then I mean, and how this pandemic helped you transform the way you facilitate, how this pandemic opened to a new possibilities. You think it's better or worse than before facilitating, or on your experience? What can you say about it?
Interesting question. I think whoever you ask, you will get a different answer.
That's good.
So personally for me, okay, a little bit of perspective. In March 2020, when the pandemic hit, I didn't know how to create a breakout room on Zoom. I didn't even have a Zoom license.
Wow.
So I was one of those pen and paper facilitators who only does in the room, in the physical space. And I didn't use I didn't even use music.
Wow.
So there was literally no technology in my rooms.
Wow.
So you can imagine the kind of shift through the pandemic. So, and I was fortunate enough, having been linked and invited to facilitators communities who would then just join forces and support each other to get everyone up to speed. And now what I observe is that there's a camp of facilitators. They cannot wait to go back into the physical space. And there are those who say, actually, I won't go back. And I'm part of the second. So I decided for myself, I do online facilitation, full stop. Because from my perspective, there are just so many benefits that I cannot ignore. So first, it's better for the environment. We don't need to travel. So it's also better for our schedules. We don't have to sit for 8 hours in the same room. We can break it up in either 2 times 4 hours or however many kind of chunks you want. This gives us time to actually reflect and digest on the content and don't rush into decisions just because the schedule says that in 8 hours we need to come up with a decision or an idea. Also, when you're in the physical space and you ask groups to form smaller subgroups to discuss with each other, you always have either a sense of FOMO, why they're laughing and we are not laughing, why they're writing so many post-its and we're not writing any post-its. Or you have someone who can listen. So I think that the conversations, the one-on-one conversations in a breakout room, just magic because it's so intimate. You're close to the camera, you, at least in Europe, you're very rarely so close to one another in the physical space. So it's very intimate. You can go very deep. Nobody is listening. So you can really be yourself and show, open a window into your soul and into your private space, literally. And last but not least, I'm not done yet with my benefits of online facilitation, is that it democratizes the room. So for instance, if you think of an offsite, and it was actually one of my podcast guests, Jacob, who pointed that out, and I find it extremely inspiring. Thinking of an offsite, after the workshop, you have the CEO who sits at the bar, and apparently it's open so everyone can just walk over and have a conversation with the CEO. In fact, who are the people who actually walk over and end up until 3 a.m. getting drunk with the CEO and benefiting from all the related benefits from that? It's usually the more senior, extroverted, confident, usually male people.
Yeah.
Whereas online, everyone has the same chance to end up in a breakout room with the CEO and have their own time with them. And if you feel uncomfortable to stand up in a workshop room and walk to the front to put your sticky note on a flip chart, this asks for confidence. If you don't have this self-confidence, if you feel shy, if you don't feel happy in your body, you don't do that, and hence you don't participate as much as you would wish. And this is also taken away in the online format.
Wow, it's a true. Yeah.
What is your perspective on that? What's your preference?
I really now love it more the remote, I think, because also the asynchronous thing you can do. People can enter after. Right now, for example, like giving classes in the university. And yesterday, well, I made a poll, and actually the students want to come back, but then we work a lot, focus it in remote, and I said we can solve here better. And if you have something else to add, you can enter whenever you want. But let's work and let's be conscious about time. And they're pretty conscious, and their conversation flew through the post-its, to everything, and simultaneously. And they really feel it. It's a shame that, okay, you are young and you want to go to the campus, be with your friends. And that too, I really want, even if I'm an introvert. But if we made, as we said in our second round, that we are more conscious about the time we spend and with the experience we made, I think is better now with this. You know, when we have to work and be and democratize, as you said. But when we are together physically, we have to be better, because never know if you will be back or not that frequent as before. So I think for me, yeah, it's better, and both worlds can be together. But for working, really, and because we have like both designer mindset, I think the remote open a pretty nice window. As you said, we're having this conversation through the corners of the world, and will be pretty hard to think about it before. So I think
Yeah.
I am better, but not conscious. And if there's not conscious there, will be pretty hard for you to enjoy and to be in the past or in the future that doesn't exist. I don't know. So
Yeah, precisely. And I think it's there's so many opportunities now online to bring people together. And again, what you just mentioned, it's nice, especially for students. It's so important to socialize on campus. But then the purpose is not the learning. The purpose is the socialization.
Yeah.
So, and I think that what many teachers and university professors have missed is to give students the opportunity to exchange with each other and to also socialize with each other. So I facilitated a summer school over 3 weeks. And before each lecture, we had a check-in with everyone where they would join randomly breakout groups so that they can network and get to know each other. It was a group of 60 students who didn't know each other from all over Europe. And then for the faculty members, we told them, okay, every 20 to 30 minutes, we ask you to ask a question, and then we'll send the students into breakout groups to discuss the questions and come back and just put in the chat their thoughts. And the feedback of the students was overwhelming because they said it was the most entertaining and social experience, learning experience that they had for over a year.
Wow.
Because they didn't have any opportunity to socialize and actually to speak to fellow students.
Wow.
So the question is, how can we create the space and design opportunities for them to meet? And then what are the spaces where they could meet after class so that they can just hang out, even if it's over video? Because I don't think that it's about the touch. Right?
No,
I mean, well, in South America, maybe, or you're more into the touch and the hug, and in some European countries as well. But I think if we really boil it down, it's more the emotional and mental connection than the actual physical touch.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Probably you can be more closer to somebody in the internet remotely, than someone you have in front of you, because internally you are not in there. So that's true. I kind of a mix of that. We are like the more European side of Mexico, Monterrey, for good or for bad, I don't know. But probably sometimes we only socialize for socializing, but at the end we are not like making bonds. That is the good thing at the end.
Yeah. And then, so this is not to say that I would replace my my Saturday evenings with friends by a Zoom call.
Yeah.
But then the purpose is to socialize and to hang out together with friends.
Yeah.
But I think if the purpose is learning or ideating or working in the broader sense, then we don't need to sit in the same physical space and breathe the same air.
Yeah, actually, I think we are faster now and creative now, at least in my experience, that when we go together, okay, we have an hour, we have nothing more, and we have another meeting then, or I have to go and taking care of other things, or I don't know. So we are pretty much focused, and I think the ideas emerge faster, clearer. And sometimes when we were there, we drink the coffee, then tea, then we do eat something, and like 45 minutes after, okay, we have to start now. So right now it's okay.
And after lunch, the energy is gone.
Yeah.
And everything takes double the time. Yeah.
That's true. Now, can you talk about your never done before festival? And we are curious, and I think the audience will love to hear it and know about it.
Yeah, never done before. So it's a child of the pandemic. And it was basically born out of two observations, that when I would go to conferences, I am presented with best practices or speeches about everything that, or workshops about things that people feel an expertise in. So very often I walked out and thought, been there, done that. Please give me something new, something exciting. And the other thing was that I didn't know the people who would facilitate or host the workshop. So I would go through the agenda and then I look at the title and the description, whether it appeals to me. But I think a lot of the facilitation work comes through the personality and the style of the person doing it. Yeah. So, and Never Done Before was a working title in the beginning, where I reached out to my podcast guests or facilitators and asked them whether they would be happy to contribute a workshop. And the only condition is that they have to do something that they've never done before. So everyone who comes to the festival knows who's presenting because there's a podcast episode. So they can really get a feeling for the personality and style of that person. And for sure, they will experience something that is imperfect because it hasn't been done before. And I think that although we all know cognitively that we learn best from failing and from experimenting, very rarely we allow ourselves the space of failing together and then reflecting on a meta level. Okay, what was planned? What happened? Why did it work? Why didn't it work? And to have this conversation about what is it actually that makes some exercises work, some fail, what are the group dynamics and how do we impact that as a facilitator? So while most conferences showcase the best outcome, we basically do the opposite and say, okay, it's fresh, it's new, it might fail. And this is the beauty of it. So this also requires really the safe space, because it's not that I'm asking rookie facilitators to try something they haven't done. No, these are expert facilitators with several years or decades of experience. And for them to have the courage to test a crazy idea that they might have developed, but they wouldn't be able to sell to any client because a client doesn't want to take the risk. Then I really want to make sure that they're doing this in a space where we're all expert facilitators, where we are all interested in being in this together and where we can all learn from this experience together.
Oh yes, that sounds great. I think you will have another episode version of it this year, November or something like that. I don't know if I read it or heard about it. I don't know if you will have this episode or something new, or will be another chapter of Never Done Before.
Yeah, so Never Done Before is always a little bit different. So the constant factor is the festival. It's always 24 hours. And it's podcast guests who contribute a workshop Never Done Before. And after last year's festival, the community reached out and said, okay, we want more of that. We cannot wait until November. So in February, I thought, okay, let's have Never Done Before facilitators in digital residence. I wanted to call it the Burning Man of facilitation, but I was not allowed to. IP issues. So facilitators in digital residence, where like artists in residence, where we have an online community and we learn together and work on our projects that we will then present at the festival. So it started in February, where I basically reached out to the community and said, okay, there will be a program culminating in the festival. I have no idea what we will do, but something will happen. You can buy your ticket now for 80% discount. And then you get everything that we're going to create, and you can co-create it with us, but there's no guarantee. And then with every month that we progressed in clarity and structure, and also the online environment, the price increased until I think from May, we charged the full amount for the ticket. Because then we moved from Slack to Circle, so we have a real community space. And now we're partnering up with Velo, which is a new kind of online office space. So we have a weekly co-working space for our facilitators.
Wow.
So if you're working on a workshop or you're working on your own stuff, you can come to the space, you work, and then if you have a question, you can just walk over in the online space to another resident to pick their brain and to exchange or collaborate.
Wow.
And all of this happens because of the energy of the group. So nothing of that has been planned.
Wow.
Or close to planned.
That's
emerging.
Yeah. That's also a good thing of the pandemic. Many things emerge, and many good things, and we'll keep emerging. So finally, what future or best case scenario for you of you make you which best case scenario you wish to have for future of work, personal level, at the work level, if there is a sign there, a signal of change that makes you, okay, this have to happen, will be great.
Best case scenario is, do you remember the 80s when all the managers and leaders went to presentation skill training and learned PowerPoint?
Yeah.
So I imagine that our managers and leaders sign up for facilitation courses, because facilitation is a new presentation skill of the 80s. And I imagine that we stop wasting people's time and energy in bad meetings. So, and I was hoping, or I am hoping that through the remote work that will continue to distributed work. I read some interesting articles about the word remote. So distributed work, where everyone works from home or from wherever they want. It doesn't allow, I hope and I trust that it will kill poisoned or toxic company cultures. Because you need a level of trust. If everyone works from distributed spaces, you cannot micromanage them. You need to reach out and ask for help. You need to be very explicit. So my hope is that these toxic companies will just die out, because nobody is willing to accept this toxicity in their private home environment. And so you cannot be productive and creative in these environments, and I think they cannot survive online eventually.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty nice scenario. I love it how you said it. The facilitator is like the new PowerPoint presentation skill. Completely agree. And if the CEOs or the C-level learn this, we will help to be more responsive, and finally things advance, and because we need it. And sometimes we have to. We hope that this selfishness lasts the finish. This selfishness that doesn't help a lot, doesn't help. And sometimes there's many people that want to go back because they want to feel like this privilege, or like, okay, I am the king, so you need to help me. And I think that has to stop for every time. So I think, it's a best case scenario, and I think many CEOs are like, okay, we are understanding, and they are more close to people, are more I mean, there's many people, but what I think is a positive thing, or the majority is.
I wonder whether. I wonder whether it's bad intention to want the people back in the office, and I wonder whether it's really micromanagement or whether it's rather insecurity, because many CEOs are used to have their assistants and their support staff that they're a snap away. Oh, Lucy, can you just print that out? Oh, please, John, can you please find out and bring me this paper? And where do I have to go next? Can you please order a taxi? So this is how it works in a busy C-level office. Online, this poor C person is sitting in front of his computer or her computer and has to find out how to open Zoom. And, oh, my tech doesn't work. How do I fix my internet connection? Oh, now my microphone, how can I do that? So I think that there's so much insecurity related to the online work that many leaders have not grown into yet. And it just makes their life more difficult because they have to self-organize and self-manage.
And that will get us to another chapter of self-organizing and self-management. I think it's a good topic to, or this transformation of the team organizations and all the stuff that I think right now is more actual, more necessary to transform into a more self-management organization, to be more, give everyone their own place and this interconnectedness that organizations need in order to do great things. But I think that is for another episode. But yeah, it's a great topic, and I am sure it's one of the things that I really see as one of the best case scenario, that the self-management and the nature of the organizations to be more intentional but more human at the same time. Yeah. With heart. Yeah. That will be another nice conversation that we could probably can have. Okay. Well, I think it's a good place to close the show. So thank you for being here, Myriam. Thank you
Thank you so much for hosting and for your thought-provoking questions. I loved that.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Really enjoyed it.
Your answers. Thank you. So, Reinventándonos podcast es dirigido por un servidor, Luis Salas, y producido por Polymath, una red de consultores que acompañamos a las organizaciones en su cambio organizacional y las preparamos para el futuro. Pues bueno, voy a reinventar algo. So, see you around, and big hug from Mexico. Ciao.